Mr. President, I want to close by telling a story that I told during my first speech on the floor of the United States Senate. I want to introduce you to Dylan Christopher Jack Hockley, who in this picture is age 6. According to just about everybody who knew him, it was impossible not to fall in love with Dylan Hockley if you met him. He loved video games, he loved jumping on the trampoline, watching movies, he loved munching garlic bread, he had dimples, he had blue eyes, he had this really mischievous little grin. You can see it here wearing one of his favorite shirts. His beaming smile, it would light up almost any room that he was in. He loved to cuddle, he loved to play tag every single morning at the bus stop with the neighbors. He liked to watch movies, he loved the colored purple, he loved seeing the moon. And he loved eating his favorite foods, especially chocolate. He was so proud that he was learning how to read, and he'd bring a new book every day home. He most importantly adored his big brother Jake, who was his best friend and his role model. Dylan's mom, Nicole, who has been a champion in the cause of ending gun violence in this country, always thought that Dylan was, in her words, quote, a bit special, a bit different. She said that he was late to develop speech. He was late to learn how to crawl. There was always a little something about him. You couldn't put your finger on it, she said. He liked bland foods. He only wanted plain spaghetti. He had a habit of flapping his arms when he got excited. He would put his hands over his ears when he heard loud noises. He was diagnosed with autism. But as his father points out, autism is a spectrum, and it has many different facets to him. Dylan loved repetition, and he'd watch his favorite movies over and over and over again, the Gruffalo, Wall-E, and he'd find a particular portion of that movie that he loved, and he'd watch that portion. He'd rewind, he'd watch it, he'd rewind, and he'd watch it. His laugh when he watched those favorite portions was infectious. Dylan was struggling with autism as a student at Sandy Hook Elementary School, but he was a special boy who is going to turn into a special young man. He idolized his brother Jake, but he idolized someone else as well. He idolized a woman named Anne Marie Murphy. Anne Marie Murphy was his special education teacher and his personal aide. And over the course of the beginning of his first grade year, they formed a bond, a deep bond that is often hard to form for kids with autism like Dylan. Their bond was so tight that he had a picture of her on the refrigerator along with his class. And every day when he'd walk by the refrigerator, he would point to the picture and say, "There's my class, and there's Mrs. Murphy." It meant something to him to have that relationship. And he loved going to school in large part because he knew he had someone there who loved him back. As Senator Booker has talked about the expectations that we should have for each other, that expectation of deep, passionate love for each other, Dylan and Anne Marie Murphy had it. Senator Blumenthal and I got to Sandy Hook Elementary School after most of the families had come to realize that their loved ones weren't coming back, that their little boys and girls were probably lying on the floor of those classrooms. And we still saw and heard things that I think we both wish we didn't hear and see. But when Nicole Hockley was standing in or outside the firehouse, when she came to the slow, awful, crippling realization that her little boy was not coming back, she had a moment where she thought to herself, maybe Anne Marie will come back and she'll tell me what happened to my little boy. And then she had a second thought, that Anne Marie probably wouldn't leave Dylan if he was in danger. when Adam Lanza walked into that classroom and aimed his military-style assault weapon with clips attached to it holding 30 bullets, Anne Marie Murphy probably had a chance to run or to hide or to panic. And instead, Anne Marie Murphy made the most courageous decision that any of us could imagine. Instead of running, instead of hiding, instead of panicking, Anne Marie Murphy found Dylan Hockley and embraced him. You know why we know that? Because when the police entered the classroom, that's how they found Dylan Hockley, dead, wrapped in the embrace of Anne Marie Murphy. It doesn't take courage to stand here on the floor of the United States Senate for 2 hours or 6 hours or 14 hours. It doesn't take courage to stand up to the gun lobby when 90% of your constituents want change to happen. It takes courage to look into the eye of a shooter and instead of running, wrapping your arms around a 6-year-old boy and accepting death as a trade for just a tiny little itty piece of increased peace of mind for a little boy under your charge. And so this has been a day of questions. And so I ask you all this question. If Anne Marie Murphy could do that, then ask yourself, what can you do to make sure that Orlando or Sandy Hook never, ever happens again? With deep gratitude to all of those who have endured this very, very late night, I yield the floor.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.